Hello, everyone. This is your Native American Studies professor. Hope you all are well. I am recording this short lecture for Module 1 as part of the lecture material. So, as you see, this is about stories. And one of my primary points is to communicate that stories within Western culture have this sort of pejorative idea. They're not true, they're made up, they're myths, that sort of thing. And when it comes to indigenous cultures, what you hear a lot of Native people say is our stories are true. And I have to tell you, over time, I have found this to be very true. Um, and so, again, the point here with this lecture um, and with other themes in the class, this will certainly correspond also with weekly module 2. But I also want to say, guys, that and girls and everyone, that these PowerPoints and these lectures do not necessarily directly relate to each module, but they certainly are meant to echo, to run parallel to, and that sort of thing. Okay, so to finish up the summary, we are looking to, let's say, elevate indigenous people's stories so that we understand them as legitimate as any story that Western culture is telling, right? And the thing we really want to drive home, or that I really want to drive home, is that every culture is telling stories. Every culture is transmitting their information through story. Unfortunately, within Western culture, we don't recognize that when we present knowledge and information, that we are actually telling a story. So this hopefully will become clear through this lecture and through the modules. I want you to especially please note the title of the required reading in module 1. And the title of that reading is Restoring the Landscape. And Professor Corntassel is playing on the word restoring, but making it to be restorying, right? So telling new stories, right? Or bringing back the old stories. So, yeah, he'll be able to say those things better than I. Okay, so here we go. So remember this lecture, this story that I'm telling you. Okay, this is going back to the idea that a lecture, which we don't think of as a story, is indeed a narrative, is indeed a story. Okay, we'll be saying that word about a gazillion times. So remember, as I said, as you read the article or the book chapter rather in weekly module 1, the reading by Professor Corntassel, and certainly remember it as you go through the semester. Okay, so just to drive this story point home, once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, once upon a time in 1996, and in this galaxy, in a country called Africa, or in a, God help me, in a country in Africa, a continent called Africa, and in the country of Guinea, dot, dot, dot. Two English researchers traveled there to help. And it's a very dangerous thing, this word help, within the historical and current context of the relationship between Euro American researchers, especially, but just people in general. The expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But misguided help has had very serious implications for Indigenous peoples throughout the history of colonialism, and we'll get into some of those things. But there's just to give an example from my own world, maybe not each, but a lot of my ancestors, the ones who invaded in the 1600s and later, right up to myself, have had conceptions that they're helping, right? So we want to be very critical about this word. We want to be very self-reflective about this word. And here's the main point. When it comes to Native communities, as outsiders, a strong rule of thumb is if they want help, they will contact you. Okay? So there it is. Okay, so these researchers, like so many Westerners and their organizations, thought these people and the ecosystems in Guinea needed saving, right? So these researchers did their research. They used the latest. Notice I don't say best. I say latest in scientific inquiry and scientific equipment, and they got the facts. Okay. So they used GPS, which was new at the time, to take satellite pictures of some of the villages to which they were traveling. And the next slide is going to be one of the satellite pictures. And by the way, having outsiders who actually get boots on the ground with permission and ideally an invitation from Indigenous peoples, it's actually kind of rare, and especially back in the 90s. So it's a little shocking, right? But so getting themselves to actually travel to these sites and actually talk to the people. We'll see it taught them and us very important lessons. So here is the satellite shot, okay? Now the red areas, first let me back up. So this whole area, this whole landscape mosaic is what we call it in ecology. And by the way, one of my masters is in ecosystem management with an emphasis on forest management. So I just want you guys to know that. Anyway, so that I, sort of know what the heck I'm talking about. So all of this is called a mosaic, a forest mosaic. And that is, you can see that word comes from it's a patchwork, right? And if you guys know, a mosaic is, when they use the little pieces of glass or ceramic to make a larger picture. So this is specifically called a forest savanna mosaic. And so the green part is what we call savanna. It's pretty dry, arid. It's got low, shrubby, woody vegetation. And the red parts are trees, stands of trees. Now, the little white circles in the middle of the trees, those are village sites, and the white lines are pathways between the villages. So, these researchers, right, these from Western culture, right, seeped in Western culture, we're all very much marinated within our own cultures, right? There's very little we can do about that until and unless where we embark on a very serious and lifelong commitment to self reflection, to conversation with others, in order to recognize our cultural biases and do our best to work around them, to deconstruct them, to root them up and out, and that sort of thing. Okay, so these, as I was saying before, these researchers did their research and they got the facts, right? So, from their cultural perspective, right, from my people's cultural perspective, what the facts were that, oh my goodness, look at how these indigenous people are deforesting this area. There's only these little clumps of trees left. Sorry, my laptop. Right? Oh dear, we've got to get down there and save that ecosystem. Okay, so when these researchers get boots on the ground actually and go and speak with these people, the people who live there, right, yeah, let me tell you, we plant these trees. We've been planting them for a very long time. There would be no trees in this area whatsoever if we didn't plant them. The whole area would not just be savanna, right? It would go full on desert. Okay, so the point is, well, let me go back to this slide so you can